Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about the British East India Company and answering the question, how did a corporation take over an entire subcontinent? We're going to be skipping around a lot in history because there's a lot to cover, but there are also very key points. It all began in 1600, where Queen Elizabeth I signed a royal charter and appointed Sir Thomas Smith as the company's first governor. In 1615, Sir Thomas Roe was sent by King James I to visit the Mughal Emperor Jahangir, who ruled over most of India at the time. The purpose of this visit was to establish a commercial treaty that would grant the company exclusive rights to build factories within India, and in exchange they would bring a lot of European goods to the emperor. The visit was very successful and allowed for the company to establish a very strong foothold within India. In 1670, the monarchy is restored in England, and King Charles II gives the company rights to establish their own territories, to make their own money, to command troops, to form alliances, to also make war and peace with other imperial powers. In the 1680s, the company raises its own army, most of its troops coming from the local population. And this was mostly due to them needing protection against other trading competitors, other imperial powers, and sometimes hostile local leaders. Then, in 1717, the Mughal emperor waives all custom duties for the company, which was huge and allowed for them to import and export as they needed to and wanted to, and didn't have to pay any sort of fees on those things. Then, in 1756, the Seven Years' War begins between Britain and France. And then in 1757 specifically, the war brings itself to the Indian land, or to India. And this happened within the region of Bengal between British and French troops, where the British eventually won, and the Mughal emperor granted the company complete control over the administration of the region and also gave them the right to collect tax revenue. And after this, they decided to triple the land taxes. This became known as the shaking of the pagoda tree or the rape of Bengal due to the amount of corruption within the company. And back in Britain, the company's rise to power becomes a very heated topic of debate within Parliament. Then in 1773, after Parliament debating a lot about the company and the way that it runs things, they passed the Tea Act, which allowed the company to have greater autonomy in running its trade in America, which eventually led to the Boston Tea Party. But also, at this time in 1773, the British government's really worried about the way the company is governing its territories and decides that they want to pass the East India Company Act of 1773, which introduces a lot of government control over the company. They also appoint Warren Hastings, who is currently the General of India, as the first Governor General of India, which allowed for them to have somebody on the inside who would really listen to the crown and really allow for them to have greater control over the company. In 1773, the company also becomes the leading supplier of opium in the Chinese market, which was important because the British were very much in love with their tea, especially Chinese tea. And opium allowed for them to make a lot of money and really be able to establish a really strong tea market. In 1786, by this time the company's rule extends over most of India, Burma, Singapore, and Hong Kong, and 1/5 of the world's population is under its trading influence. Then, in 1839, the Chinese government imposes a death penalty on opium smuggling, which was close to 1,400 tons a year at this point, and also a lot of deaths. Then, in 1840, the first Opium War begins between Britain and China. The British eventually win the war, seize Hong Kong, and can trade as they please with opium and for tea. Around this time, back in India, the company is also starting to experience a lot of rebellions within its Indian territories. Then, in 1857, after many years of rebellions, the company finally comes to an end after what they call the Indian Mutiny, or what is known as the First War of Independence within India. The 80% of the company's army were Indian natives who were very unhappy with the way that the company was running their country. And the crown eventually seized complete control of the company. And in 1873, the company finally ceased to exist as an entity entirely, and all of their control and power and influence came to an end.